What's the most mischievous word in business? That's an easy one. Greed. Think of it this way. Call someone a greedy pig and you're liable to get a pop in the nose. But say that greed is immoral or wrong, and a lot of people will tell you you're confused or naive, or maybe even just plain stupid. They'll say that greed is useful or necessary. Some will even say that greed is good. Of course, those people often tend to look a lot like this, which doesn't probably do much to assure you that greed is good, or that you should feel good about greed. But is there anything to this notion? Is greed useful or necessary? Is it even good? And what exactly do people mean when they say this? Let's start by getting a little historical perspective. Up until just a few hundred years ago, if you went around telling everyone in your neighborhood that greed is useful or valuable, or God forbid you said that greed is good, you'd be lucky if you got off with just a few dirty looks. More likely your friends would stop talking to you, your family would disown you, and within a few days you'd be run out of town. Greed, you see, was acknowledged by basically everyone to be a sin. A pretty big sin. One of the 7 deadly, in fact. Even if you were a tradesman or a merchant, taking advantage of people to line your pockets was considered nothing less than a crime against the community. One that could see you pilloried in the public square or thrown in jail. The great Reformation theologian Martin Luther said that when merchants made room for greed, they opened the door to hell. And when they got there, Dante envisioned them rolling giant weights around an open pit, smashing into each other for eternity. Heavy stuff. Well, what changed? For one thing, the world was introduced to this guy, Bernard Mandeville. He's largely forgotten now, but it isn't a stretch to say that he was considered the most dangerous man of the early 18th century. Mandeville wrote a book called The Fable of the Bees. It was an allegory about a bustling society of bees that looked an awful lot like London or Paris or any one of the most affluent cities in Europe. Industry was thriving, the arts flourished, and pretty much everyone was well provided for. This despite the fact the bees were constantly lying, cheating, and stealing from each other. In the fable, God gets fed up with the bees for being hypocrites, always complaining about the very bad behavior they consistently indulge. So he decides to teach them a lesson. He snaps his fingers, and they all become virtuous. What happens next? For starters, the bees are now satisfied with what they have. They stop buying expensive things just to impress their bee friends. They work fewer hours to spend more time with their families, and they stop putting all of their effort into new schemes and ventures, feeling no great need to prove they're better than anyone else and get ahead. But with everybody working less, spending less, and striving less, the economy collapses, and the poorest bees are hardest hit. They lose their jobs, and soon they go hungry. The beehive shrinks. It's a more virtuous society, but it's also smaller, poorer, and weaker than it once was. And that was precisely Mandeville's point. The moral of the story, if you could call it that, was that private vices yield public benefits. You could have a virtuous society that was exceedingly simple, the Amish, for example. Or you could have a thriving, affluent society fueled by pride, envy, and ambition. But you had to choose. You couldn't have both. Now, for those who came after Mandeville, they didn't sign on to the idea that all vice was beneficial. But some of them agreed, begrudgingly, that he was onto something when it came to greed. The more people strove to enrich themselves, the greater the industry, trade, and innovation, and the wealthier a nation became. Food, shelter, and clothing all became cheaper, and jobs were better paying and more plentiful. Greed kept the wheels of commerce turning, and everyone, rich and poor alike, benefited. And so, greed is good, right? Not so fast. If you take seriously Mandeville's vision, it can seem like you have to choose between 2 types of goods. You could have virtue on the one hand, or you could have affluence and all the wonderful things that come with it on the other. But the flip side of this vision is a choice between 2 types of evil. Poverty on the one hand, and greed on the other. If it is true that moral behavior doesn't lead to material affluence, you might just have to choose between the lesser of 2 evils. But just because you choose one evil over another, say greed over poverty, it doesn't therefore make the lesser evil somehow magically good. Instead, greed is somewhat like a small poison you're willing to tolerate in the body politic, but only because it kills off a much bigger one. In this case, the scourge of poverty. Nowadays, we see this type of logic constantly employed when defending greedy decisions. Take Martin Shkreli. In September of 2015, the former head of Turing Pharmaceuticals decided to raise the price of Daraprim, a life-saving drug, from $13.50 a tablet to $750, a 5,000% price hike. Shkreli immediately faced a firestorm of criticism for being greedy, but he defended the decision by saying that his company was dedicated to the cure of toxoplasmosis, the condition Daraprim treats. With these new profits, he told CBS, we can spend all of that upside on these patients. Now, it seems unnecessary to point out that if Turing did spend all of its profits on research, it wouldn't be relying on greed at all. Indeed, it is the possibility of making huge sums of money off sick patients that keeps a company like Turing in business and makes medical breakthroughs more likely. That, at least, is Shkreli's logic, and Bernard Mandeville's as well. But it doesn't therefore mean that greed is good. Rather, it means that greed does good, and that's a big difference. For to say that greed is good is to maintain that the kind of behavior we associate with people like Martin Shkreli, or guys like this, is worthwhile in itself. That even if it did nothing to materially improve the world around us, we still would have good reason to embrace it. Now, maybe some people actually believe this, but I suspect that when most people say that greed is good, what they really mean is that greed does good, and that's a distinction worth keeping in mind. Greed may very well be the smaller poison that successfully kills off the appalling effects of poverty, but we should never forget that a smaller poison is still poison all the same.